noticing in the past few days is, for example, the NFL just started season yesterday, and before even the kickoff started, there was this situation where they were playing two national anthems, right? The national anthem for for America, and then there's what is called the Black National Anthem, and then also a time like a moment of silence. In that moment of silence, the teams got together and they locked arms, and so it was unique to hear thousands of people booing, people trying to be united because
people who were booing were the people in attendance at the game.
The fans, right? There's about 17,000 fans,
right?
And not saying everyone was booing, but
right.
It was very unique to see, them locking arms, and then you hear the boos right away,
right?
And then you see some of the players looking up, shock, surprised.
So this is possibly the first time that the players saw a reaction from the attendees or the fans, and they were booing. Why?
Well, this is what it makes it unique. You can't really gauge in totality why people were booing, but what has been going on for the past 3 years almost since Colin Kaepernick kneeled, right, and for the national anthem, to bring up awareness of police brutality in the United States. There's been many people talking about why you're bringing politics into sports, right?
Could it be that the fans just want to see the game and they don't want to get caught up in the social issues?
Well, that's one perspective. No doubt that some people just want to go, not think about, what's going on in the world. I just want to see, however many 60-minute game, or in baseball, 9 innings, or whatever the case may be. They don't want to be thinking about politics. But there are other people as well who took offense that he was disrespecting the flag, and a lot of other issues that were coming up behind that. So it's unique now that almost in every game they're going to play two national anthems.
Interesting.
Right? They're going to have moments of silence. They're going to have, what already NBA has been sort of doing, Black Lives Matter shirts, and even the names on the back of the jerseys, right? They don't have to have their name. They could have, a certain, a statement, what have you. So definitely this is a polarizing issue. And that's just one of the issues that are going on alongside how, we saw that, the Supreme Court or local district judges, they blocked Donald Trump's order, right, to block illegal, quote unquote, illegal aliens, right, to not
from
be
the census,
from
right?
the census, right, that
Right.
He didn't want them to be counted, and so that was blocked, and then also the federal government not wanting to have. When it comes to dealing with sensitivity courses for different agencies dealing with issues of white privilege, they don't want that language in these sensitivity courses and things of that nature.
Sensitivity training, so that agencies can have that aspect of diversity and pluralism whenever
Right.
it comes to representing
what America is becoming or already is.
In general,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
the grain and browning of America, the older that it gets more brown. Yes.
So
A
yeah,
sociologist actually at Rice University told me that, based on his research since 1970s in Houston. He
Wow.
said Houston is a microcosm of what America will become. The older that it gets, there is a factor in sociology, the grain and the browning of America. Meaning the older it gets, the more brown it becomes. And because of demographic shift, there's nothing that can be done to stop that, right? Because of
Right.
birth rates and so on. So obviously a lot of what we see with issues of immigration and representation for minority has a lot to do with this pushback.
Yeah. So when you see all this going on in the past just few days, alongside, of course, things dealing with pandemic and, of course, police brutality, a lot, even in Houston, they fired 4 police officers for shooting a Latino man who was, they said they had a mental breakdown. So there's a lot of politics behind that as well. Police unions standing up for the police officers, and this is a lot going throughout the country. So when you see this type of you see it coming on the TV screen, dealing with sports, right? And you see this going on. For some people, it could be, a little bit depressing, frustrating. It seems like, when are things are going to change? And, but not to go too deep, and we're going to talk about these, I'm sure.
We can go too deep. It's all good.
No, but one thing that I noticed, I just saw a documentary called Storm Under the Brooklyn Bridge or something like that, dealing with the case of a young 16-year-old named Yusuf Hawkins, who was murdered in Bensonhurst, in Brooklyn. Just, and it's a nice documentary, but it brought me back, because I was living in New York at the time. All of these different events that were going on in New York, just New York alone, was the Central Park, rape of a woman. There were Latinos and African Americans were accused. To a lot of issues were going on at the city at the time. You would almost think that it felt in that area like things were falling apart.
Right.
So it's not the first time that America has gone through this. Allah knows best. God knows best if it's going to be the last. But no doubt that there's been situations where people have been able to speak out against this injustices. You're just hoping that you see a more positive change as our children start growing up in this environment.
So I have a personal theory.
Oh,
here we go. I don't think America will totally get away from the aspect of discriminating people because of its diversity. There's always going to be an issue of, pluralism not being understood. And when you put the social economic elements into play in a society, you always have a class that share specific privileges. Not saying that they didn't deserve to get there or not, but some of the privileges that certain people have in society make some people in society not be able to share those same privileges. So there's always going to be inequity, right? In the issue of justice or social justice, the good thing is that in America, you can actually, attempt to do whatever you can about it. I mean, there are certain countries where...
Oh, it's locked down.
Yeah, I mean, you just disappear, right? You just disappear. No phone call, no nothing, right? And so it seems that America has the ability, from the infrastructure of how it was formed, to be able to allow for people to ward this off. But to what extent is that accepted? To what extent does it impact? To what extent does it actually kick in? I mean, there was an abolition of racism, right, by a certain year, but it doesn't mean that it really was upheld on that year, right? I mean, Selma, right? I mean, they still had to go forward to try to vote and were prevented, right? So, I don't know, but America seems like a place where whoever came in here, I'm not talking about people trying to get in now because they're having a hard time, right?
Yeah.
But whoever, our parents who migrated here and so on, they didn't realize the complexity of the situation, right? They thought back home everybody's like same skin color, where everybody's from, right? They're they're from down the street.
Right.
They speak the same language, same customs. But when you come here, all of a sudden you are, a crash course, of all kinds of things happening. So it almost seems like even when minorities become majority, which is happening in number,
right?
I mean, Latinos are beyond the number of African Americans now.
Yeah.
Right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and those are the documented, right? If you count the undocumented, it's a whole lot of people. But the more the minorities become majority, you start seeing on the other side of the spectrum, some people, if they associate it with race, if they see that, a 1% of the population, people in the wealthy class, right? These are people who generationally are passing down wealth. Yes. Right? These individuals happen to be Anglo-Saxon majority, right? White. And when it comes down to how much they are growing in regards to natural birth rate, it doesn't compare to Latinos and African Americans.
Right.
and Muslims, right?
Yeah.
We have a whole lot of babies, and sometimes their wealth is being passed down to their dog or their cat. You know, sometimes I mean, there's been studies about, you know, sometimes not even looking at the fact of having kids, you know, being an option,
Right.
right? And a lot of that happened in Europe.
Yes.
I mean, there's like a not just a decline of birth rate in Europe. I mean, it's almost sometimes negative.
Yeah.
You know,
That's why you see some countries, you know, in Europe trying to like pay, you know, newly married couples, you know, if you have X amount of children, we're going to pay for your rent, or we're going to give you X amount a year for your child. So they're trying to encourage, you know, certain, like Hungary, I think it was one example of that. And of course, then, you know, people seeing the shift of their country, you know, and you can express that in a certain way in Europe. Someone can claim, well, you know, we're from here and, you know, we've seen the shift. And other people can argue, well, you know, you took us, you know, from India and brought us here and, you know, labor and all that. So people have arguments on both sides. But in the States, outside of the natives, no one can sit here and make a claim, you know, this is our country, this is our land. Like, our people were established here. And
that's part of the issue, right? Because the narrative is to make it the way it was again. But how was that? I mean, you have a lot of native Indians and corn, and, you know.
Yeah, if you want to go back then, okay.
Go back, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, that's one of the unique situations that, you know, we see people trying to understand what that meant for. Yeah, there might have been for a group of people that America was great for them, but, you know, for the vast majority, it wasn't. You know, and we're talking about, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago. We're talking about holistically, right? Rights. I mean, even, you know, they were celebrating just a couple of days ago, right? You know, celebrating or the anniversary of women. I think it was 100 years for women being able to vote, but it was specific to white women. It wasn't even to the, you know, African or anyone else, African American down the line. So it took, you know, whatever, 30, 40 more years until African Americans in general can vote. And so it's unique to see, you know, the history of America come out, and it's a struggle for many people because they don't, not everyone wants to hear, you know, the challenges that America has gone through. They just want to, you know, make it that 1950s, you know, suburban white picket fence feel, and maybe that's how they grew up with their grandparents, but that's not the reality for the majority.
When I went to live in Colombia and I was a teenager, you know, I was about 16 years old, I remember my cousins thinking that everyone in America lived like 90210. You know, they thought everybody was like jumping in and out of their convertible.
There might be some people, you know, Googling 90210. Like
exactly. They may not even know. I think they did some new update.
Oh, like a reboot? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, a reboot sort of deal. 90210 was majority, right? White kids, right? Beverly Hills.
It was a white novela.
Yeah, it was. It was. Straight up.
You know, and I mean, these scenes, man, of the cars, the street, and then like the ocean behind them, right? And then they go in and out of houses, and these houses are mansions, right? And I remember sitting down with my cousins in Colombia, and I was like, look, man, these people never even work in this show. You think that's the reality of what happens over there? You know, a cousin of mine later on came to America, and, you know, he worked a lot. And then he went back to Colombia, and I was like, you see, man, you thought in America, you know, like money just grows on trees, and you're jumping in and out of convertibles, man.
Palm trees and convertibles.
And he was like, man, when I went over there, I realized what we had in Colombia. We had time with family, and we had life. And I was like, well, that's why I used to mention to them when I was there. It's like, man, you guys have natural fruits and nice rivers, and y'all can just hang out. Why y'all want to go over there and work so hard? They were like, no, but America, X, Y, and Z. So I remember that television and Hollywood,
of course,
man, it was like the marketing machine of what supposedly we were living. But, you know, getting into the topic of waking up on 9/11, and what we mean 9/11 is September 11th of 2001.
Oh.
Do you remember waking up that day, and what do you recall? I mean, whenever these images or you heard something, how did that happen?
I remember it like it was yesterday. My older sister knocks on my door. I'm, sleeping. My wife is 9 months pregnant with our third child. I'm trying to, I was studying abroad, so because my wife was about a week, she was doing about a week from that time period. So I was just trying to see the baby born and then go to school late. And I hear my sister knocking on the door, the bedroom door, and she's like, wake up, you have to watch the news. So I turn it on, and she comes in, and she says, she's not Muslim. She says, your brothers bombed the World Trade Center. And it was right before the second plane hit one of the towers. And then about maybe 2-3 minutes later, boom, you see the second plane hit. And at that moment, so many emotions, going through your mind, because already you're thinking, man, is it Muslims who did this? And that's how it's ingrained in you, since you're young. I remember my sister, when she came from El Salvador to New York, she said one of the first images she remembers is the 1979 Iranian Revolution, and men with big beards and turbans burning the American flag. That's how she connected, Muslims and Islam.
That's the imagery a lot of times. I mean, in Hollywood, there's something called Real Arabs. I don't know if you've seen that.
Nah.
They did a whole study of all the different films that show, men with long beards looking like Middle Eastern, and something to do with an explosion.
Yeah.
For so many years, and so it was embedded in the psyche of many people.
Many people, my sister included, watching the news, and then my father watching movies like that during the 80s, when there was a lot of hijacking and Delta Force, Chuck Norris stuff. So automatically you're thinking, like, man, could this be happening like this? And all types of emotions are coming in my mind, because you don't know really what to think. And for hours, you hear everyone is just in a state of confusion, and you don't know, And I remember one of the first images, like maybe about 4 or 5 hours in, like a static satellite, image came of the Taliban in Afghanistan, already saying, no, we didn't do anything. They knew what was up. They knew that someone was going to try to blame the Muslims. So, like I said, about 4 or 5 hours in, it was a static, I remember, a satellite feed. And, they were just saying that they didn't do it. So I remember that night, going through that day, it was tough. You just seeing, the emotions of the community. Nobody was coming at the mosque. I went to work. I had a summer job, and nobody was. I was at a mall. I was working for a carpet, like a Persian carpet store, and nobody was coming in. I was listening to the radio on my way to work, and people were not wanting to leave the house. They were scared, because this was before even the third plane that crashed in Pennsylvania somewhere. So and Pentagon, right? Yes. So all of that happened, right? The Pentagon got hit, and then the third plane somewhere in Pennsylvania, or fourth plane. So America under attack, under siege, all this feeling. So I remember coming out at night, and I used to wear what they call thobe, right, like a long robe, and I used to just dress like that all the time, and I had my boots on, and I go to Subway. I don't know why I went to Subway.
Trying to eat fresh.
You know what I'm saying? At that time, and I come out the store, and this older white gentleman is like, excuse me. And I'm already in my, just trying to see what's he going to say. He's like, why do you wear this? And I'm like, I started telling him about Islam. He just was listening. He goes, oh, thank you very much, and walked away. So that was just that first day. So then, then you start talking to the community members and what's going to happen. And
how long were you in Islam by then?
I was already 96, so man, going on. Yeah, it was just before 5 years. So I had seen the community be comfortable. The Muslim community, very, many of them very successful in business and education, and engineers, doctors, all across the community, right? Businessmen and women. And then what I mean comfortable is that they just started to believe that they were living the American dream.
They thought they were the 1%.
Yeah, a lot, and to a degree, the financially
bracket.
they were in that area,
right?
So they never, I'm not saying that no one ever faced any type of backlash before, because there were, situations like the Oklahoma bombing, the first World Trade Center. People were made fun of or harassed. I'm not saying that didn't happen, But because of status that many of these community members had, they didn't face a lot of the backlash on this level ever before.
Right.
So there was a lot of concern and
they hadn't experienced the civil rights sort of difficulties.
No, not even close.
Yeah, exactly.
Not as a whole community, and you can sense the tension within the community that those first few days, people not really knowing what to do, and it was a unique situation because it was in that time period. We just known each other for about a good 3.5, 4 months, where the media started reaching out, not only in English, but also in Spanish as well, and
to the Muslims in general.
To the Muslims,
like speak up.
Please let us know what's going on.
Yeah, what do you have to say about this?
So that's when people were trying to find out. Okay, can we find at this church we need a convert and a born Muslim. Okay, how many Latino Muslims can speak Spanish? So Univision or Telemundo can interview you guys, and that's when it became very unique because you're dealing with people who, and thinking about it right now, you think it's like there were a lot of people who were angry and upset, but they were still willing to listen.
Right.
And a tragedy like that hadn't happened since 1940. When Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, nothing like that has ever come close.
Hiroshima,
right? Yeah, not Hiroshima. I forgot the name. It slipped my mind. Hiroshima was when
Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor, yeah, the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Hiroshima was at the end.
Yeah.
Right. So the point is that nothing in the States has ever faced anything like that ever before. And all of a sudden it's quote unquote the Muslims. When I mean quote unquote, meaning that they just a few extremists were now the representatives of our faith. And then with all of that going on, there were still people willing to sit back and listen. And I'm sure they wanted to engage.
Yeah, I mean, because if the Muslims hadn't told them who they were willing to say, well, if you're living here, might as well get to hear your take on things.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right? And were the Muslims really talking before all this incident happened? Were they explaining to people who they were?
So this is where a lot of people may not know from those who are younger in age or weren't Muslim at the time or not familiar with the Muslim community, that outside of urban areas, right? Meaning there are communities like in certain areas, in Philadelphia, the East Coast, Philadelphia, some parts of northern Jersey, New York, the boroughs of New York, Chicago, Detroit, Atlanta, L.A., because most of the people were converts, right, and established Islamic centers from the 70s and onward, or even maybe before. Some of them, older communities from the 60s, they knew their people and they would go out and engage with them. And Muslims, especially in the 60s and 70s, some of it dealing with the Nation of Islam, and some of it just the Muslims having some type of they were active in different activist roles within the within society, that people respected them. And that's why you see a lot of African Americans in those days naming their children Muslim names, because we could start off with someone like Muhammad Ali, right, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, people who were famous, Malcolm X, so on and so forth. So people started naming their children after Muslims' names, even if they weren't Muslim. They had some respect for the Muslims because they did clean up a lot of certain neighborhoods, and so they were active, right? The Muslims were active, but outside
they were hitting up on social issues.
Definitely.
A lot more than even the theology of things.
Right.
Some groups.
Right. Some of them,
right.
And so the immigrant community, not saying that they didn't do anything, but being fair, but their main focus was trying to establish what they could in a new country. Obviously, they want to establish a place of worship, and the attitude was, though, for many people, that this is our place, and we understand that a place of worship is for anyone to come in.
Sure.
Obviously, you respect it. Someone who doesn't know the faith,
they may have been trying to get a piece of the normality of what they had back home.
Yeah.
So they want a place to pray where
Yes.
they can go in and out 5 times a day.
Yes.
Right. And then when they start having kids, they're like, oh, they're leaving this identity that we know of, so we need a school. So we have to preserve the identity, and identity at that time could have been their cultural
For most people, yes.
ways of doing things,
Yeah.
because Sometimes they came and maybe we're not so aware even of the
fundamental principles.
Fundamental principles of Islam and so on.
Yeah, so when you see that was being established amongst the Muslim community, engagement, like true engagement, what I mean, like really trying to inform people about Islam wasn't really there. So when you see that, the tragedy of 9/11 happening and then people trying to engage, one thing that, at least in Houston, was being attempted was reminding, starting with leadership and then just to the general community, that this is not a PR stunt, right? Even I don't want to go too far, but even like a year after the tragedies, or maybe 6 months even, people started to put American flags in their businesses. Muslims started putting American flags in their businesses, on their cars, like stickers. And I had a problem with that personally, because what happened to if a person wants to, wave the flag, and that's what they've been doing since they were young, that's upon them, right? But if you've never done it before, then what is the purpose of that? What do you?
It was saving their skins, right?
I understood.
It's like,
but I want to.
Yeah, it's like, look, I'm one of the good guys. I'm with y'all. This is not like, don't look at me like an outsider.
Yeah,
right?
and because we were given the access to actually give sermons, right? One of the few converts in our in the community that were able to do that. I would remind the community, like, listen, people know real. You can say many things about people from the States, but they can feel if someone is not being real. You want to be your authentic self. You want to be true to yourself. If you don't wave the flag, just say, I don't wave the flag. You can respect the country. Even if you want to say you love it, no problem. That's you. That's your decision. But don't try to show something that you're not, because people can read that. And that's even a bigger problem, right? Because then you become more suspicious. And one thing that, I'm thankful that God allowed me to talk about to the community at that time was, especially with the younger generation, learn your history. Because history here in the States, you can learn a lot about what has happened and you can benefit from it. And then you'll see during, the next few years how that, that information can help you in order to be, proud of who you are, right? Stand for what you stand for. And still, with all those principles, you are actually living out not only Islam, but you're being the best citizen in this community if you're truly following Islam, right? So I wanted them to really understand that and not be shy of who they were, because there were a lot of Muslims who were extremely scared, women who wear the head cover or the hijab, taking it off, men who usually would have big beards, shaving it off. People didn't want to have, be recognized as Muslims with their names. I mean, to the point where, you think about it, like Sikhs were getting killed.
Yeah.
Right. At that time,
they're being confused for
Muslims
right?
because of the turban issue.
Right.
So, I can understand there was some concern and fear, but being 23 years old, we were very enthusiastic about our faith, but they gave us the opportunity to talk about it, so we took advantage of it.
So I was sleeping, and my dad wakes me up and is like, look. And then he turns on TV and it's like, I'm looking at him like, what is this? And he said, the world's going to change. I remember he said, the world's going to change this. And what's interesting is that in the midst of them saying who could be doing this,
right,
they had extradited one of the major drug dealers from Colombia.
Mm.
And, Pablo Escobar had been fighting extradition. Mm. That's why he had been terrorizing the country.
Meaning Colombia.
Yeah. To not allow for their citizens to be extradited to be in jail in the United States.
Mm.
So there was a drug dealer from Colombia that had been extradited to the United States. And they threw the name there saying maybe this is, yeah, in retribution of this. I'm like, I was so confused, and I was 3 months in Islam. And when I hear that Islam is being blamed, right, it really made me think, like, all these people have been asking me why I became Muslim. They're about to hear Islam in a totally different way. I mean, I remember a friend of mine who I grew up with over here. Alhamdulillah, he became Muslim later on, Yahya.
Hey.
His name is John, right? White American brother. He wasn't Muslim whenever he saw what was going on. He was like, he said, yo, Jay, Right? He used to call me Jay.
Yeah.
Yo, Jay, you part of them? And I was like, bruh, like, I like, how you gonna say I'm part of them and this and that? He's like, yeah, I can see, I can see you be with us. It's like, come on, man. And I remember sitting with him and his wife at that time. And subhanAllah, through that dialogue, he actually became Muslim. And so what began to happen was this dialogue, and I was discussing this with Abdurrahman on the Spanish podcast before this. I remember, Muslims, if there were 150,000 or 200,000, however many Muslims in Houston at that time,
Right.
they didn't have Spanish representation. And when the media came, and it's like, Univision, Telemundo,
Right.
they're like, hey, we need somebody to speak in Spanish. That was the moment where, possibly because I had embraced Islam and my girlfriend at that time, when we got married in a mosque,
Yeah.
right? Even my family, for the first time, they're going over there, and
I remember that day.
yeah, everything's so new to everybody. How do you behave in a mosque? Some of my cousins, girl cousins, right? The way they, can they come in? Just all that stuff happening. All of a sudden, people know I'm Muslim. I just became Muslim. My father had recently embraced Islam as well, and then all of a sudden, it's like, can you speak in front of the media in Spanish? And I was thinking, like, what, how can I do that? Like, I don't know how to speak in public. I don't know much about Islam. But it was this request. And I remember, Allah have mercy on him, it was Aziz Siddiqui. He called me and he asked if I could speak in front of the media. And he was the president of the ISGH, Islamic Society of Greater Houston. And I remember thinking, like, why would I do this? Right? I've been looking at how Muslims talk in front of the media in English, and they weren't doing.
Yeah, it wasn't.
They were not doing it justice.
No.
They were almost saying, we're peaceful people. We're peaceful people. But you do, something like this on TV, and then you're saying you're peaceful people. Whoa, like, fill in the gap. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, they don't know you, and you're saying you're peaceful, but then this happens. So I was like, all right, I felt like I should do something, because we all felt like we want to do something. We didn't know exactly what to do or how to do it, right? In a moment of crisis, you're like, I don't side with that. I don't agree with that. Let me do something. So getting in front of a, reporter, I remember from Univision, he hit me with those hard questions, and
I remember that day.
it was rough. It was rough because the way he came, he already had his mind made up as to how he wanted to trip me up, right? He was questioning, if I'm patriotic. He's questioning if I am Latino. Right, and then he's questioning my loyalty, right, about living here, and what would I do with X, Y, and Z. It's just a lot of things, and looking at those moments, right, it sparks something up inside of someone when you go through a crisis. Either you continue going on and doing what you've been doing, or you change. And I remember at that moment, I was like, I gotta learn this media, man. I gotta understand how to do this. And eventually going to churches. I remember going to a church. Abdurrahman came today with thobe, right? The white, what do you call it in English?
So
Gown,
white gown, yeah.
Right? So you're a new Muslim. You put this on because you think that this is going to, like, make you feel more comfortable amongst Muslims because if they're wearing something like this.
Right.
I go to a church with you.
Yeah.
You remember that?
I'll never forget that.
We go to a church, and the topic of this church is like, of this talk, it wasn't mass.
No, it was like during the week.
It's during the week.
At night, yeah.
And like all kinds of different denominations, pastors and all kinds of people, from Baptist to Methodist to whatever, all in Spanish. And the topic was, why? Like, why September 11th? Why did this happen, or something like that?
Yeah.
I remember calling Sheikh Khalid Basuni and I asked him, hey, there's this topic. What do I say? And right away, he came from his background in belief, I guess, Aqidah, you know, and he's like, well, one thing you want to get across is we're going to be questioned on the Day of Judgment one day. But before that, we don't question God. Whatever happens is part of a decree. And now it's all about how we react to it and how we can work together as a society. I said, that's a good speaking point right there, right? So I go over there, man, I have this white thobe, I have a kufi, right? And I go up there, people are speaking, And I mean, this place has statues, right? Yeah, I remember. Oh,
Don't
man.
start, man.
Isa, that was interesting. It was interesting for me as a new Muslim to hear. I mean, mashallah, you had a mentor. We had a mentor.
Yeah,
in common.
yeah.
It's like, hey, can we go in there? You know, there's statues and this. It was so. It was like meeting these worlds. And I'm new and I'm about to speak and I don't know how to speak. And so when I got up there, I'm like, man, I'm just going to tell these people something about the oneness of God. And then
Right.
that point about what Sheikh Walid mentioned, we can't question God, right? One day he'll question us. But what we do about it is important. But I became Muslim because I learned, and Allah is one. And I was like my simplistic little, I'm just a new Muslim here. But that was interesting afterwards. Like, well, when I got done, it was standing ovation.
Standing
right?
ovation. People were just
People
so
were like-
happy. I was shocked. I was like, man, they're loving the message because you don't know how they're gonna react.
I
to a
thought they
Muslim.
loved Tawheed. And I just learned the word Tawheed and the oneness of God. And I was like, these people are clapping for Tawheed, right? You remember that? They stood
Yeah,
up.
yeah, they stood up. It was a standing
They-
ovation. Yeah, it was because were me and a few other brothers. We were at the top of the church. I mean, in the second floor, so we could look down and we seen everyone stand up. And I'm like, man, wow, they're just really loving him talking about, like you said, the oneness of God. And I'm like, okay, I mean, that seems nice. I mean, I wasn't expecting that,
Right.
at all.
I remember coming down in the crowd. It was like a bunch of people coming and like they want to talk to me. And I'm like, I've never even really spoken public. This is weird, but all these people surround me and this one guy comes up to me. He's like, I have a question for you. And I was like, yes. And I'm thinking, this is great, right? I mean, we have some dialogue here.
Right.
The guy's like, how did you learn how to speak Spanish so well? Man, as soon as he said that, man, I was like,
Yeah.
I like looked at what I was wearing, right? And I was like, wow, I forgot to tell these people, man.
From Colombia.
I'm one of them. Like,
Because it was Latinos. Right?
it was all Latinos.
Right.
So they assumed like an Arab went over there
Probably.
speaking proper
I'm
Spanish.
sure they thought that was.
And I was like, yo, I got to change this get up. I can't come like this no more, man. I can't do this. And yeah, I mean, that was the beginning, right? I mean, after a calamity like this, we end up striving to share the message with people. And subhanAllah, a lot of what happened, the inception of the origin of a lot of what began to happen with Islam in Spanish, or even creating something like Islam in Spanish. We used to do a TV show live talking about these issues. And in the middle of that turmoil, people wanted to know about Islam.
Yes.
And people began to embrace Islam. And
Yes.
all of a sudden, the Spanish language became like this little gold mine. Nobody really knew had access to it. And all of a sudden, it's like, yo, these people really want this, and creating the material. And I mean, here we are 19 years later, man.
Yeah, I mean, when you look back at that time, when it first happened, I'm thinking that I'm not going to go back overseas to study because I was studying in Saudi Arabia. So I thought, that was it for me in my studies because there was absolutely no communication between embassy, nothing. Nobody wanted to talk to Saudi Arabia at that time. So in my mind, I'm thinking like, what am I going to do with my life, type of deal. But one thing that helped in that process that kept me going was, having these opportunities, like you say, that day when you were being interviewed, I remember we were at a small mosque, and you're
It's like a little house.
and you were actually in the prayer hall, while me and another sister named, I think, Patricia, we were in like a waiting area, and they interviewed us, just basic questions, and then they asked you, I think, a little bit.
Patricia,
more
mashallah, she won Teacher of the Year in a whole district
Hey,
not
that's
long
right.
ago.
Wow, not
Yeah,
long
yeah,
ago.
Not
Okay,
long ago, yeah, a couple
Wow.
of years ago. I mean,
nice.
yeah. So mashallah, I ran
Yeah.
into her anyway.
Oh, nice. I
it's
mean,
amazing. Yeah,
yeah, thinking about that
Yeah.
time, and then, like I said, going to different places and being able to, it was one thing to learn a lot of information, right? You're learning about your faith, but then when it's real time,
right.
and you're, it's not just, an ideal situation where you just go up and just tell someone about Islam. This is what Islam, 5 pillars, or this
Right.
and that. You're standing. I remember myself and our mentor we were invited to a church, and as we entered the church, we realized that it was an LGBTQ, congregation, and I just recall sitting there, and I could feel their tension, you know, when someone learns how to, you know, give, you know, speeches and talks and things like that, you kind of get a feel of the crowd. And just people just sitting down, not smiling at all, hands crossed, you know, just staring. And, you know, we went in on, you know, started to talk about, you know, how this tragedy didn't make sense. You can't explain crazy. You know, that's what our mentor was saying. And then, you know, Q&A, you know, portion, you know, opened up. That's what people were waiting for.
Right.
And, you know, you started to see, you know, people open up about, or ask us, you know, all types of questions. And of course, you know, what is the position of Islam when it comes to their lifestyle? And I appreciate our mentor being able to answer that question very, it was short, but it hit the specific points that it needed to hit. And they couldn't really react to it because so many times, and I don't want to say that all Christians are like this, but many times, many Christians, when they speak about the LGBTQ community, it's an attack, right, on the lifestyle and hellfire and this and that, and that's what they're used to hearing. And he just talked, you know, he stuck to the principles. This is, you know, we have a desire, right, that, you know, every human being has, and that's to be intimate with, intimacy and, you know, and et cetera, and how you fulfill that desire is by being married. That's the way that is the best way to fulfill that desire. And marriage in Islam is between man and woman. And he didn't say anything else. And you can see people like wanted to say something, but they were actually thinking about like, wait a minute. Okay, I'm sure they didn't agree with the answer, but they were like, well, that's their position. Right. And he just brought the position. And then I remember like literally after seeing them thinking for about 5 to 10 seconds, they were like, but why do you beat your women? So automatically it went to something else, you know, stereotype or whatever. And then, you know, you having that open dialogue with them. But it did show that you know, the ability to interact with people that you probably would have never thought you would be interacting with. You know, you're dealing with college students, you're dealing with, you know, churches, like I said, in English and in Spanish. And then we were dealing with our families.
Yeah.
And they're trying to figure out what's going on.
I remember going to a church. It was a majority white American church. It was a Unitarian church in a Memorial area, which is an upscale,
yes,
you know, part of town here.
Yes.
And, you know, my article had come out, or an article had come out about my conversion story on the Houston Chronicle, and it was like new faith changed man, right? And because of the article, they invited me to speak in this church, and so the article had Lindsay Wise, I remember, was a reporter. She had interviewed 2 of my friends from before. John was one of them. Yeah. And Oscar.
Wait.
Which, interestingly enough, later on they both became Muslim.
Right.
But they were asking in that article. She was asking them about me before Islam, and then now what they knew of me. And obviously they were like, he's totally changed. You know, he doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't blah blah blah, right? And I mean, these guys, she knew, right? They were part of this game we were in, you know, and so on. But the article, when it came out, I never knew that an article like that could lead to me being invited to a church that the demographics there, I mean, majority white American. I think the percentage of like very educated, like master degree and doctorate degree holders were very high. And I remember accepting, you know, this invitation. It was new to me. But when I went there, the lady, she was very nice, the one that greeted me and so on. She was like, oh, this is the first time we have a full auditorium before we even begin. And I step in, and it's like over 300 people in this small space in like majority white America. And I mean, from Memorial to Alif, where we grew up, I mean, 10, 15 minutes away. Yeah. You know, so it's not like we're so far away, but different lifestyle.
Yeah, no, that
right?
changes.
Totally different lifestyle. And so I remember feeling the pressure. Like these people didn't even, when I got up there to talk, they didn't even want to hear what I wanted to say. They wanted to get right to the Q&A. They just, they just wanted to ask questions. Like, you know, what do you have to say about that? Right? And so I switched up. Whatever I thought I was going to say, I was like, listen, I just want to let y'all know, you know, I grew up down the street, et cetera, et cetera. If I didn't know about Islam and if I didn't know Muslims, I wouldn't feel comfortable if I if I heard a Muslim just moved in next door.
Mm.
And they were like, huh? You know? Like, what?
You threw them off.
Yeah. Like, what? And I said, yeah, because if I didn't know Chinese people, and I saw on TV Chinese people, you know, kill people who are not Chinese, I wouldn't want a Chinese neighbor.
Mm.
And they were like, you know? And so I said, listen, I'll just share a little bit of what I found in Islam that improved my life, right? And I remember mentioning some of that, and then I mentioned something about Muslims, what I come to know from Muslims, which was positive. You know,
Right,
I had a really good experience. And all of a sudden, before we even got into the Q&A, elderly white American woman got up, and she just screamed out, "Young man, this is beautiful. Why did nobody from your congregation ever come speak to us?"
Mm.
Man, that threw me off so much, you know? And I was like, I'm trying to ask myself the same question. Like, why? I mean, I just became Muslim a few months ago. Why do I come? I mean, it made sense that I spoke in Spanish before because I had the Spanish language. But why am I over here talking if there's like 150,000, you know, English-speaking Muslims? You know what I mean? And that's when I realized the American public just didn't know the Muslims.
Yeah.
They didn't know Islam. Even if they do meet some Muslim, you don't know what you get, right? Because if you meet a Latino, you don't know what you get neither.
No doubt about it.
You know what I'm saying? If you meet an African American, you don't know what you get.
Anybody, white, anybody.
You can't generalize, right? And so I remember that was the beginning of thinking like, okay, English-speaking people, similar to Spanish-speaking people, don't know about Islam, right? We'll focus in Spanish, but we're going to have to do something also in English because this is where we grew up.
Sure.
So interestingly enough, we have a podcast now launched today in Spanish and one in English so that we can cover both of these grounds.
And you know, thinking about that, what you were going through, right, and having that discussion and even that thought process, you know, this goes way back for us because when, you know, having that discussion with my mother specifically, and did she ever knew, I was shocked that she didn't know about Muslims living in El Salvador, known as the Turks, and her
they call them Turcos.
Turcos, yeah.
Over there.
Yeah,
they don't know them as Muslims. They're like, you know, if you're a good business person, they say, "Usted parece turco." You're like a Turk. That's the equivalent of you're a good businessman. That's funny.
Yeah, so they know they have different types of names. They have their own little area, you know, like a neighborhood that they live in. But she did mention to me, you know, if Islam was the truth, then why didn't I receive it when I was younger? And that's something that we do. I've been blessed with being, you know, through this whole process, right, have been able not only to tell people about Islam in English and in Spanish, but also we've been able to talk to, you know, the community, you know, especially in Houston. I mean, of course, we've gone, you know, I mean, you could say worldwide, right? But we've been throughout the states, you know, through the Americas, right? We've been able to talk to people about Islam, but when it comes to our local Houston community per se, we were one of the few who were able to go up there because there weren't that many converts giving sermons to the general masses.
And the Muslims realized that. They were like, okay, these people, they don't have an accent.
Yes.
They can't be stereotyped to be said, well, you're Arab.
Right.
Or,
South
you know,
Asian,
South Asian.
Yes, or that, right.
To people is like, you know, you're Indian, maybe.
Yeah.
Like it's funny, right? They almost realized that strategically we could assist.
Yes.
Assist them, right?
No.
Because they needed some representation. Anyway, it seemed all brotherly anyway.
Sure, yeah, and it was cool because we did deal with their, you know, the youth of the community.
Right.
You know, we were still obviously younger then, so a lot of the, you know, 5-6 years apart from, you know, let's say early high school, late high school, early college age students. So we were able to relate with a lot of them that were going through their identity crisis and things of that nature. So we would speak in a firm fashion. We would speak, you know, with confidence. And of course, we're not trying to come off as, you know, we were know-it-alls or, you know, or that we're arrogant. You know, that's not what we're saying. Is that because God blessed us with family. Like I remember my father always telling me to be proud of who I am. You know, I pronounce my name with, you know, Parada. I don't say Parada. Right, you know, Spanish at home. You know, you just know your roots. You're proud of it, and you keep moving forward. And you know, you can be an American like anybody else. So I never felt second-class citizen or anything like that. So being able to speak, you know, that way to our community, and also want the good for them. We wanted them to be aware of what's going on, because they were able to hear our story. That, you know, one of the first people to tell you about Islam was an Egyptian teenage friend, or, you know, your age, right? At the time, you know, one of your friends was Egyptian. One of the, you know, first people to tell me about Islam in detail was a young Afghani guy, right? But they were pretty much born and raised in the States. You know, had you not known their name, you would just think they're probably Latino or Greek or something like that. But they told us about Islam, right? So we were trying to really encourage the community. Like, look, you guys have something, a gem that sometimes we may not realize what you have. Don't forget about it. Make sure your children appreciate it, because you don't know who they may impact. And I think through the years, you know, we've been able to have some of an impact with mentorship and assistance. And now that we're growing older, we're now trying to, you know, again, go beyond just the Muslim community, but interact with other people from other faiths.
And that's one of the major issues. I mean, going back to, you know, how they were utilizing the American flag, it was almost as if to be said that, you know, accept us. Yeah. Right? So we don't have that. We grew up here. We're not trying to be accepted. We're trying to be ourselves. Yes. And that is being American, right? Yeah. Being American is being your authentic self. This is what you would hopefully want from that type of identity. Yes. Because there's all kinds of different demographics in America. Right. And so you can be the best Latino, the best Muslim, and it doesn't contradict. To that, I want to take, you know, Alex, if you have anybody there that is asking any question, we're going to go into a little segment here called Ask Me Anything. You can ask us at a personal level anything. You can ask us about anything. A lot of times we've been doing this question and answers, and it's mainly about Islam, right? Or we're educating about Islam. Right now, these are social issues. This is where we're going to be able to, you know, kind of get with the people.
And we want to make sure that the people know that when we mean anything, we don't shy away, right? People have asked us questions, and you can even tell in the question, they're like, "Oh, we don't want to offend." And,
yeah, no disclaimer.
Yeah, there's no need. Just be whatever you need to be.
Most definitely.
You know, because this gives an opportunity for us to have these type of discussions, right? And
this is like a round table, and I hope, you know, extending it over to people who are watching this, you know, they can also ask. So let us know, Alex, if something comes through.
Most definitely. And everybody, just go ahead and put your questions here in the comments section, and we'll go ahead and read them off. But we did have one brother, David, mashallah, early on. He's in Dallas, and he said, what did he say? He said, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We hear brothers, I hear the bros spitting that hawk off the muscle.
So one thing that you're going to see through this podcast is, you know, we have, obviously we're multilingual, right? We know how to speak, English, obviously, right now. Hablamos español, we're somos Latinos, right? You know, تكلم العربي, we speak Arabic as well. You know, we're able to, you know, throw
and slang as well.
Oh yeah, and we have our 90s, 2000s. That's slang.
90s.
Sometimes our kids are like, "What are you talking about, man?" Like, look, our slang is better than y'all's. But so, you know, at times if we're saying something that people don't understand, you know, we can explain it. So when he said haq, it means truth, right? That's, you know, what he's saying, that we're expressing ourselves in our truthful, in a truthful manner, we hope. So, you know, one thing, as questions are coming in that I wanted to know about yourself, just, you know, because, you know, we've known each other close to 20 years, and we've traveled together, you know, we've done many things together. Obviously, we work together, chilled together. But one thing that I was curious to know is, you know, obviously your passion, is working through media. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, when we ask our children, right, I have, 8, and, you have 3, and you ask your child, like, hey, what do you want to be? What are you looking for the future, especially for our children who are teenagers? And some may be like, I'm still thinking about it. And some be like, my second oldest, she wants to be a vet. She's known that since she was like 9. She wants to be a veterinarian. My third oldest wants to be, a physical therapist. Yeah, was it like that for you? Like, I want to work in the media. I want to be part of that realm when you were young or a teenager. Did that just happen though, before you became Muslim, or was that something that intrigued you to learn more about it as you became a Muslim?
You know, growing up, I went through so many different experiences, and I guess for the people watching or listening, they can go and find Latino's Journey to Islam. There's a video out there on YouTube where we talk about our journey, and you know, I was a leader of a gang at a very early age, but I think it was a reaction to a lot of the discrimination that was happening in our neighborhood, and I didn't see it as something negative, and we didn't see it as something negative. And at that moment in time, there was actual discrimination from African American to Latinos. And certain movies that came out, you know, like New Jack City and Minister Society, Boys in the Hood, it glamorized and kind of like made the African American, you know, youth, right, at that age, kind of like stand up and say, you know, we own this, right? So I remember, I mean, I didn't think anything of it other than, you know, to defend myself if anytime I was wrong. But I happened to defend myself, you know, to a leader of another gang. I didn't know it was a gang. He was, you know, part of a gang, whatever. But the miscommunication amongst people is that because I had beat up this guy and he was the leader of a gang, then I must be the leader of another gang. And so that happened at an early age. I was 13. I think what came afterwards was always to me like a movie. I was like, man, that just happened? It's just like a movie. In fact, I've never seen something like this happen in a movie. It's actually better than a movie. And so I used to always like look at what was going on. And eventually, I mean, I had to leave. There was an attempt on my life. And when I went to Colombia, I lived in a beautiful place and I loved it. And I was like, wow, natural rivers. And I was like, this is just like a movie, right? And then when I come back, you know, and eventually find Islam, no doubt, September 11th and all these things happen, and it's like, this is just like a movie, right? But, so I always had that kind of like imagery, vivid imagery, and I think that that's kind of how I learn as well as a visual learner. But once I was asked that key question after September 11th by that reporter, you know, about, you know, what would I do, you know, if I were asked to go to Afghanistan and all this. And I was caught up by surprise. I was like, man, this guy already came like prepared. I don't even know. Like, I was like, look, I just became Muslim, and if I go into Islam, I'll look and I'll find the answer. But I haven't. I remember when he shut the cameras out and everything, I started feeling like this lens, this camera, is being used almost like, you know, a weapon, right, against me as a person who doesn't know how to defend themselves in front of it. Why would I not learn this tool to then be able to utilize it to reflect through the lens some of what I've seen, right? So I begin to think like I may go ahead and choose this as a career. And it was a cousin of mine from Colombia that was living with me who actually asked me, because I was bilingual, hey, can you come to this shoot? There's a shoot and we need somebody who's bilingual. I was like, what do you mean? And he said, there's going to be this recording for like a company, and they need a guy that acts like he walks in and he's like tired from work. And it was like a multi-level thing, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you know, you got to pick up the phone and say, you know, you talk to the wife or whatever. And I was like, yo, that sounds cool, you know? I was like, and I go and do this and I see all the lights and I see the cameras, and I was like, yo, man, who knows how to do this, right? And I asked my cousin, and he was like, that guy right there. And so I was like, yo, man, where'd you learn how to do this? He said, I went to the Art Institute of Houston. In fact, I'm the president of the National Honor Society there.
Okay.
And I was like, that's interesting, man. I'd like to know how to do some of this. And he was like, come through and I'll give you a tour. And I remember going, you know, with my wife, who recently also became Muslim. And when we saw the Art Institute of Houston, we saw almost like the future. I mean, at least for me.
Right.
I'm like, all this media, man, you know, to have the capability of producing or creating something that doesn't exist, something that just comes from your mind, and knowing how to do it with your hands, imagine it and do it. I was like, that's real. So I ended up going to the Art Institute of Houston for multimedia and film, and my wife ended up going to the Art Institute of Houston simultaneously at the same time for graphic design. And we were two of only like 4 Muslims in total in the whole place, right after September 11th. And a lot of our projects, in fact, my wife Sakina, she designed the logo of Islam in Spanish. You know, as a graphic designer learning, I started learning video production and did a lot of television shows just based on what I was learning. And so Islam in Spanish came out of that need to express in September 11th. But my first media project for video production, like we were supposed to shoot something 5 minutes. I told a guy, man, take me up in the hood in Fifth Ward. And we shot a film, literally, like 15-minute short film with real dope fiends, man, real people who were selling drugs and those doing the drugs. And I told everybody, I was like, yo, I want to show the reality of what's going on here. And I just want the youth to be impacted. And they were like, let us know what you want. This is a place where like even drug dealers came down the street and they were like, they saw cameras. And I was like, listen, this is what I'm about to do. I'm going to go up in this crack house and shoot this because I want you to understand the ills of this. They were like, yo, man, do what you do. So the respect that came with like just telling stories, I was like, this is it. And, you know, that led me eventually to go study sometime in Hollywood. I mean, story from the screenwriting doctor of Hollywood and, you know, all in all. So glad to be.
We'll show that film sometime.
That's in the archives. Nobody has ever seen that film in public.
Just a few have
just a few have been able to see it. But yeah, man, I mean that's why I studied. And you know, at the beginning when I was mentioning about, you know, being the executive producer of this podcast, like the amount of time that it takes to really format something, right? We had a pre-production meeting today.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right? So when Alex walks in, he's like, what's all these equations, right? It's like 10%, 5%, 50%, right? When we structure things to do with media, it's like creating a building.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what gets me nowadays, right? When people haven't gone in depth to study media, they're on the outside consumers, but they're not producers. And I think it's very important that we produce our own stories instead of being, you know, reactionary to others in regards to how they tell our story.
Nice.
So with that, we've hit the mark. You know, we're at that 1 hour mark. And
did anybody come with anything or just
now? So we have Omar Contreras. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. How's it going, brothers? My name is Omar. I'm a revert to Islam. How did you guys learn Arabic and how long did it take?
Go ahead, Mujahid.
MashaAllah. Well, eventually I went and studied in Egypt, specifically to focus on the Arabic language. And I had a window of opportunity, being that my mother didn't want me to go before and I'm the only child. She gave me a year. And I went there and alhamdulillah, I think there was a barakah, blessings from God that I literally went into an institute specialized in the Arabic language, Markaz Fajr, which a lot of people were going from different parts of the world. But the top instructor that everybody wanted to work with, when I told him what we were doing here in America, he didn't teach people privately really. But when he heard what I was doing, and you know, he said, I'll do it, but with one condition: you never ask me to take money from you.
Wow.
That's when I knew he'll just do it for Allah. So I think even though I was there 1 year, the amount of benefit I gained, I can't measure it in amount of years. I came back and I was able to not only understand what I'm preparing if I'm giving a khutbah or if I'm giving a talk, but most importantly, seeking the guidance of the Quran and you know, the statements of the Prophet ﷺ. As an individual, you benefit so much. Now with speaking about it or just transferring it or reading it, it just gives you the ability to, I don't know, get in to a deeper level, more beyond whatever you can do in English or in Spanish. And so it's an ongoing journey. I mean, you don't stop. That was just, you know, the beginning, and whatever we're able to do before with other teachers here, you know, you jump in and out of different classes and so on. But yeah.
Yeah, so appreciate, Omar, the question. So I was able to go, I went in 2000, started my journey to learn Arabic in the Islamic University of Medina, Saudi Arabia. Went for 9 months, came back, pick up my family, and then, you know, as we were just talking about 9/11, I wasn't able to go. I missed pretty much a whole school year. But basically from 2002 to 2009, I went to study the Arabic language. You start off learning there's an institute, the Arabic Institute, Language Institute there in the University of Medina. And then once you complete that, then you go into one of the 5 colleges, and the one that I chose was theology and also propagation of faith. And so I was there, you know, a nice amount of time. And I would say by the second year for me, you know, of learning, you start to understand and you know, pick up on things that it took a long time to really grasp, and all of a sudden you're listening to someone speak Arabic in a, in a fast manner, and you're like, oh, you picked up 30%, and all of a sudden 50, 80, and then, you start to, of course you have to put in your time and effort as well. So, it was a wonderful experience being able to, what made, my experience unique also was that you have people from all over the world, right? So you're
Same thing in Marcus Fajr. I
Yeah.
had a Japanese student that I used to really get down with. Like, he
Nice.
didn't know any English. I didn't know any Japanese. So the only way we could communicate was through Fusha, through the Arabic language, which was great.
Nah, and, so in my class, actually my roommates, other than one, American who was, from here, from Houston, there was a Palestinian, and Indonesian roommate. So you're forced to speak to them in Arabic, and then you're able to meet people from all over the world, over 100 nations. You're sitting with people from different parts, trying to learn the Arabic language. So it was not only just a unique situation learning about Islam, but meeting Muslims from all over the world, and you see that this faith encompasses all regions of this globe. So
MashaAllah.
it was a very beautiful experience for me and my wife and my children.
The neighborhood, I used to live in Hayy al-Ashr in Egypt, Medina Nasr. Is very well known. I remember I used to be in walking distance from Marcus Fajr.
Oh, okay,
I used to
nice.
walk there, alhamdulillah. The masjid in my neighborhood had like 300 people praying there from all over the world. Every night you see brothers from different parts of the world. I'm talking about brothers from Russia, from France, and it's a beautiful thing, alhamdulillah. I mean, Allah knows best if Egypt is the same way now, because that was back in 2006.
Yeah.
But alhamdulillah, and wrapping it up, and we really appreciate your question, Omar. In wrapping it up, what's a takeaway, from everything that we've discussed here? We want to leave people with something uplifting, something positive in the end. The topic here was based on a tragedy, something that doesn't represent our faith, waking up to September 11th. But at the same time, it brought us even together and, with so many different people to do some good work.
Right.
And after everything we talked about, everything that's happening, social, issues that are happening today, living in America as Latinos, as Muslims, what do you want to let the people know here to close it up?
One thing that I like to let the people know, and just through this experience, has been that in times of tragedy, of difficulty, also comes at times of ease and blessings. And we see right now what's going on right in the States, where a lot of injustices, to the pandemic, to the fires in in the West Coast, a lot of things going on, and that's just the States, let alone the whole world, right? But what's unique, having gone through that experience of the tragedies, during 9/11 and all that came after it, was the ability to be able to connect with people from all walks of life, and being able to have certain connections that who knows how that would have taken place if this tragedy didn't happen. And you can look at it as a life lesson, right? There's going to be times where you go through a struggle, right? And, not to go detail, but some of us has gone through those things. Like you mentioned, there was, someone tried to, take your life, right?
Right.
My father at 15 was sent to jail. All those things at that moment seemed like, man, I'm being sent away from my parents to, my father's no longer home. And it seems like a dark, sad situation. But in due time, little by little, of course, by God's grace, and also through, support from family and friends, you see blessings come out of that. It makes you a stronger person. So, if this may help our, the future generation going through these challenges right now, become a lot more stronger and confident in who they are, because they see, the opposite side, right? They don't want to be people who are unjust. They don't want to be people who make things difficult for, for someone. They want to be agents of, of help and of good. So, hopefully, we can learn from that. That's what I learned from these tragedies, is that you're able to come out, trying to do something positive, which no doubt it has.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. That's great. Those are great points. Whenever a tragedy happens, we have options, right? We can sit there and look at it, or any problem, any tribulation, we can sit there and be like, oh, there's the problem. And many people are very good at identifying a problem, right? There's a lot of people that focus a good majority of their life on problems. There's this and there's that and there's that. The sense of unease that happens when person just focuses on the problems. It decays their sense of hope, right? If we look at a problem like an opportunity to change, to take another direction, to learn something, all of a sudden, they don't become problems per se, things that are stopping you. It becomes like a catalyst of change. And standing up in front of a tragedy and looking at that, I mean, alhamdulillah, people, you know, asked us to get involved and do something. I mean, I can't even take the credit to say, like, I got up and said, let me go speak to Univision. You know?
That's true.
Right? It's like you were literally thrust in there. But we could have resisted to change.
True.
And be like, no, who am I? I mean, I don't even know how to speak in front of people. But when you jump into those circumstances, those circumstances have the ability to produce personal growth exponentially. The amount of information I had to grasp about the Deen of Islam may have been more exponential, you know, embracing Islam around September 11th than if I would have maybe 5-10 years before.
Yeah.
When it was like calm and I didn't have
It was
to talk
easy,
to anybody, right? And so that's a takeaway, brothers and sisters. Just remember that regardless of whatever challenges you have in life or difficulties, Allah never overburdens a person greater than they have the ability to bear. So there's always more good than there is a perceived notion of bad. And to Allah, whatever we think is bad may not necessarily be what Allah, you know, knows to be, right? In the long run, you know, what you think is bad for you may be something very good for you, right? And anything that is happening to us in life, we know is part of the decree of Allah. And Allah doesn't intend evil. He doesn't intend bad.
Right.
So if something happens, it's for us to learn, for us to strive, to be better, to grow. And if we do that, we don't have to worry about people, you know, identifying who we are and putting us in little boxes. Because we're always going to be jumping in and out of different boxes. If we really grow out of a box here and out of a box there, you can't just say, oh, this Latino guy.
Yeah.
You can't just say, oh, this Muslim, right? You can say that to somebody who will believe it. Like, oh, you're putting me down because you called me this. But if you don't believe that you can be put in a box, because you're always jumping out of whatever little box people are putting you in, it becomes very dynamic to live that way, alhamdulillah. And we have the ability to do that with Allah's help. And with that, we hope that there is a sense of benefit in you moving forward. After listening to this, we will be live every week, inshallah, God willing. The English podcast is at 8 p.m. And we look forward to tuning in. Anybody who wants to leave comments,
Definitely.
please leave comments.
Yes.
If you're listening to us for the first time and you found us on some platform, be sure to go and like us on Facebook, Instagram, and everywhere else we may be. Really appreciate Isa for co-hosting
Appreciate it, Mr.
today,
Fletcher.
and alhamdulillah, and Alex as well, who's been behind on the boards.
Hello.
Yeah, see,
Yeah,
he's
moving
tightening
this-
things up,
man.
right? So if you can say peace, Alex, because you know,
Yeah, man.
there you
Hey,
go.
Got to move back and forth. We got a lot of folks on
Get a little
different
exercise
platforms.
going
you
on.
know what I
Yep,
mean?
Yeah. So alhamdulillah, appreciate you guys, and we'll be back, inshallah, if Allah gives us life next week.
There you go.
Thank y'all so much.
God
Assalamu
bless.
alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
Walaikum
barakatuh. Allah spread all the mercy, inshallah, to the world in these chaotic times, in these social strive. May Allah bless y'all. Thank y'all. Assalamu alaikum.
So.